The alley behind Marino's diner had become my home. Not because I liked it. Who could ever like sleeping beside buzzing dumpsters and the smell of spoiled meat? But because it was quiet. No one came there after midnight except the cook who tossed the leftovers. I'd learned the sound of that metal door, a long squeak, then a short slam. That sound meant dinner. I was 45 years old. Once a civil engineer who built bridges across 3 states. Now I built shelters out of cardboard and hope. Every night I promised myself it was temporary. That maybe tomorrow I'd call an old colleague. Try to explain everything, maybe beg for work. But when the sun came up, shame was heavier than hunger. Shame keeps you quiet. Hunger just makes you look desperate. That morning frost clung to the corners of my blanket. My shoes were stiff with ice. I watched my breath rise like smoke as I tore apart an old sandwich I'd found in a bag near the trash. The bread was stale but still soft in the middle. I ate slowly, as if pretending I was back in a cafe with a plate I'd paid for. Pretending used to help. Now it just hurt. A siren wailed far away. The city was awake again. I thought about how it didn't matter. Traffic, bills, office calls. None of it was my life anymore. 3 months since my wife Linda had filed for divorce. 2 weeks after that, my firm cut me loose, and within a month my savings were gone. That's how fast stability turns into survival. One decision, one betrayal. And you're forgotten by everyone who once knew your name. I rubbed my hands together, trying to get blood flowing back into my fingers. Then I heard footsteps. Not the scuffing kind of a guard or drunk, but clean, measured, expensive. Leather soles, maybe. Crisp rhythm, like someone who never had to hurry for a bus. I froze. The man stopped just a few feet from me. A shadow stretched over the pile of cardboard I called a bed. James Monroe? The voice was calm, professional. Too calm for a place like this. I looked up, squinting through the pale morning light. The man wore a dark overcoat, scarf tucked neatly, polished shoes that didn't belong anywhere near garbage bins. His hair was silver, slicked back, and his expression held something between pity and business. He carried a leather briefcase. "Who's asking?" I said, voice rough from cold and disuse. "My name is Daniel Carter," he replied, extending a card I didn't take. "I'm an estate attorney from New York." I laughed under my breath. "You must be lost. No estates around here, just bad luck and cold nights." He studied me quietly, then reached into his coat pocket. I tensed, instinctively shifting back, old habits from the street. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a photograph. It was creased, slightly faded, but the man in the photo was unmistakably me, standing in front of a project sign that read, Monroe Engineering Solutions. Helmet in hand, smile on my face, sunlight behind me. I stared at it. My throat tightened. That photo was taken 4 years ago, before everything went wrong. Before the divorce. Before the lawsuit that ruined me. How did you get that?" I asked. "Your name came up in the reading of a will," he said. "A Mr. Richard Lawson passed away last month. According to his final testament, you are listed as a beneficiary." I frowned. The name stirred something faint in my memory. "Lawson?" Daniel nodded. "Richard Lawson. Does that mean anything to you?" I searched my mind. Decades blurred together, clients, mentors, old projects, until a flash came back. A photograph in a newspaper, a handshake and a hard hat. A man who believed in my designs when no one else did. Mr. Lawson. My first boss. My first real mentor. But he died? And left me something? Daniel glanced at his watch, then at me. "It's quite urgent. Mr. Monroe, the estate requires your presence for verification." I let out a bitter laugh. "You sure you've got the right James Monroe? Because the one standing in front of you barely owns his next meal." He didn't flinch. "You're exactly the one I was told to find." I stared at him, heart thudding under layers of worn fabric. For a moment the city noise faded, and all I could hear was the slow pulse of disbelief in my ears. "What did he leave me?" I asked, voice low. Daniel looked around the alley, as if making sure no one else could hear. Then he met my eyes and said softly, "Mr. Lawson's entire estate, estimated at $42 million. I blinked, unable to process the words. The sandwich slipped from my hand and hit the concrete. $42 million? Before I could speak, Daniel continued, "But there's a condition." A cold gust swept through the alley, cutting into my bones. "What condition?" I whispered. He straightened his coat, eyes unreadable. "You'll have to come with me to hear it, and it must be tonight." The words hung in the frozen air like a warning. James must decide whether to trust the stranger and step into a world he no longer belongs to. For a long moment, I just stared at him, the cold biting through my coat, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. $42 million. The words didn't fit inside my head. They didn't belong in this alley where the walls stank of rot and rain, where I'd spent nights wondering if I'd wake up at all. You're serious? I finally said. Daniel nodded once, calm and deliberate. Very. I laughed, short and sharp, like my lungs were rejecting the air. You think I'm going to believe that? Some lawyer in a $5,000 coat just walks into an alley to tell a homeless man he's rich? Sounds like a scam, buddy. I understand your skepticism, he replied, unbothered. But if you'll allow me, I can prove it. He pulled a folder from his briefcase, the sound of the metal clip echoing against the brick walls. He unfolded a set of documents, edges crisp, printed on thick ivory paper. There it was, Lawson & Partners Estate Division. My name typed in bold at the top, James A. Monroe. The air seemed thinner all of a sudden. My eyes blurred over the words, executor, inheritance, verification required. I forced a breath. What's the catch? Daniel looked up. His expression was careful, like he'd practiced this part. Mr. Lawson's will stipulates one condition before any distribution can occur. Of course it does, I muttered. There's always a condition. He ignored my sarcasm. You must travel to his old property in upstate New York, the Lawson estate, and remain there for 7 consecutive days. I frowned. 7 days? Doing what? Nothing unlawful, if that's your concern, he said quickly. Simply staying alone. I laughed again, though this time it sounded hollow. You want me to live in some dead man's mansion for a week? I sleep beside dumpsters, Carter. You think they'll let me through the front gate? Daniel closed the folder and gave a thin smile. If you come with me tonight, they'll expect you. You'll have a warm bed, food, and a chance to start over. Or, he gestured to the cardboard and rusted bins, you can stay here. His words stung in ways I didn't expect. He wasn't cruel. He was just right. The wind picked up, tossing a few loose papers down the alley. I watched them drift and thought about everything I'd lost. My wife, my home, the respect that used to follow my name. Maybe this was some kind of cruel joke. Maybe it was real. Either way, I had nothing left to lose. I stood up slowly, joints aching from cold and time. Fine, I said. But if this turns out to be some setup, you better hope I don't find you after. He didn't respond, just nodded once and motioned toward the street. A sleek black sedan waited there, engine running. The smell of leather hit me as soon as the door opened. Too clean, too polished. I hesitated before sliding inside. For the first time in months, I felt heat on my face. The seat hummed beneath me, warm and soft. I almost forgot what comfort felt like. Daniel sat beside me, typing something into his phone. The city lights flickered past the window, neon, blurred, fading behind us as we drove north. I watched my reflection in the glass. I looked like a stranger wearing my own skin. Tell me something, I said finally. Why me? Lawson had family, didn't he? Daniel's eyes didn't move from the road ahead. That question will be answered when you arrive. Convenient, I muttered. The silence stretched. Only the low hum of the engine filled the air. After a while, exhaustion crept in, and my eyelids grew heavy. The rhythm of the tires, the warmth, a surreal comfort, it all pulled me toward sleep. I must have drifted off because when I opened my eyes, the world outside was dark, trees flashing by, no city lights, no sound but the engine and the faint patter of rain. Daniel checked his watch. We're almost there. I looked out again and my breath caught. Through the rain-blurred window, at the end of a long winding driveway, stood a massive stone mansion. Its windows glowed faintly against the storm, like watchful eyes. A wrought iron gate creaked open as we approached. My pulse quickened. This place looks alive, I said quietly. Daniel gave a small, unreadable smile. It will feel that way, yes. He parked near the steps and turned to me. Remember, James, once you step inside, you cannot leave for 7 days. Not for any reason. That's part of the condition. I frowned. What happens if I do? He adjusted his tie, looked at the house, and said simply, then you lose everything, and something else you might not want to lose. Before I could ask what he meant, thunder cracked across the sky. The mansion's doors swung open by themselves, light spilling into the rain-soaked night. James must walk through the doors of the mansion to claim his inheritance, or face something he doesn't yet understand. Rain poured hard as I stepped out of the car. The air smelled of wet pine and iron. My boots sank into the gravel, and for a moment I just stood there staring up at the mansion. It looked ancient, almost too solid for time to break. Ivy crawled up its stone ribs, and tall windows glowed behind curtains that didn't move. Somewhere inside, I could hear a faint humming sound, like distant wind trapped in the walls. Daniel came around with an umbrella. "It's cold. You should get inside." I wanted to ask him 100 questions. About the will, about Lawson, about that warning, but his face said not now. He handed me a small key instead. "This opens only your room. Everything else will unlock when it's time." "When what's time?" I asked. He didn't answer. "Staff will arrive in the morning. For tonight, the house is yours." Before I could respond, he was already walking back to the car. The headlights cut through the rain, then vanished down the drive, leaving me alone with the sound of thunder and the echo of his last words. I looked back at the mansion's open doors. Warm light spilled onto the steps like an invitation, or a trap. Inside, the air was warmer than I expected. Not the dry warmth of electric heat, but something softer, almost alive. The entryway stretched high, lined with portraits that watched me as I walked past, paintings of stern faces, sharp eyes, all wearing the same subtle smile. Each step I took echoed deep, as though the house was listening. I found a grand staircase leading upward, but something drew me to the left instead, a long hallway lit by sconces that flickered, casting uneven light across the walls. A grandfather clock ticked at the end of it, slow and deliberate. I stopped beside it, noticing a small inscription at its base. "Time remembers its debt." I touched the engraving. It was cold, almost biting. The sound of wind slipped through the corridor, though none of the windows were open. "Just an old house," I muttered. "Creaks, drafts, nothing more." Still, my heartbeat didn't agree. I found the room marked James Monroe, guest suite. The nameplate was freshly made. The door opened easily, revealing a space too beautiful for someone like me. A king-size bed dressed in velvet sheets, a fireplace crackling gently, a table set for one, with covered dishes still steaming. I froze. The food smelled freshly cooked. Someone knew exactly when I'd arrive. Cautiously, I lifted the lid off one of the plates: roast chicken, buttered vegetables, mashed potatoes. My stomach growled, but suspicion came first. Still hunger won. I sat and ate in silence. The warmth of the food, almost painful after months of cold. Scraps, for the first time in years. I felt my body relax. The storm outside softened to a whisper. My eyes drifted toward the window where lightning flashed across the dark hills. Then I saw it, a shape in the reflection, standing behind me. Tall, still. My heart slammed against my ribs. I turned so fast the chair nearly fell, but the room was empty. The fire cracked. The clock ticked once. I rubbed my eyes and let out a shaky laugh. "I need sleep," I whispered. "Just nerves." I locked the door, pulled the curtains, and lay down. The bed felt too soft, like it might swallow me. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the old house breathe. Sometime after midnight, I woke to a sound. A voice, faint, distant, yet unmistakable, coming from the hallway. James." It wasn't loud. It was gentle, almost kind. I sat up, pulse hammering. "Hello?" I whispered. No reply. I swung my legs over the bed and grabbed the small lamp from the nightstand. The moment I opened the door, cold air rushed in. The hallway was darker than before. The sconces had gone out, one by one. Only the grandfather clock remained lit, its pendulum swinging slowly. I stepped closer, lamp trembling in my hand. Then the clock stopped. The air grew heavy, pressing against my chest. My breath clouded in front of me. From behind the clock, something clicked, like a latch unlocking. The panel of wood shifted slightly outward. There was a hidden door. I hesitated, every instinct screaming to turn back. But curiosity, that same flaw that once made me a good engineer, pulled harder. I pressed the panel. It swung open, revealing a narrow passage, pitch black except for a faint light at the far end. I lifted the lamp higher, took a slow breath, and stepped inside. The door closed behind me with a sound that didn't echo like wood, more like a heartbeat. James enters the hidden passage, unaware that the mansion's true purpose and Lawson's condition is about to reveal itself. The hidden door closed behind me with a muffled thud. I froze, hand pressed against the wood, listening. No hinges, no draft, no handle on this side. Only the low hum of the house, deeper now, like it had swallowed me whole. The narrow passage ahead was barely wide enough to walk through. The walls were rough stone, damp and uneven. The air smelled of dust, old paper, and something faintly metallic like rust or blood. I lifted the lamp higher. Shadows leapt across the corridor as I moved forward, each step echoing too long, as if the walls were breathing the sound back to me. Every few feet, I passed small plaques nailed into the stone, names engraved in tarnished brass. Jonathan Lawson, 1862-1905. Eleanor Hart Lawson, 96939. And then Richard Lawson, 1938-2024. I stopped. The last one was fresh. The letters still gleamed in the light. Beneath his name was a short phrase. Debt settled in silence. My skin crawled. I touched the plaque and felt a sudden vibration, like the stone was alive for a moment. The flame of my lamp flickered wildly, then steadied. A faint whisper brushed my ear, soft, breathy. It sounded like my name. James. I spun around. Nothing, just darkness stretching behind me. "Stop it," I muttered, forcing myself forward. Old houses creak. Air moves. That's all. The passage opened into a small circular chamber lit by a single bulb hanging from a cord. Beneath it stood a wooden desk, old but clean. On top of it, a leather-bound journal and an envelope sealed with red wax. My name was written across the front. I hesitated before sitting. The chair groaned beneath my weight, a tired sound that somehow felt alive. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. James, if you're reading this, I am gone. And if you're still here, it means you have agreed to the condition. You always had a good mind, but life broke you where the heart lives. I know what happened to you. I know what they took. That is why I chose you. This house keeps what it owes. I built it to test those who enter, to reveal what they hide from themselves. It will show you memories, but not all of them will be true. You must know the difference. If you cannot, then the house will decide for you. Stay 7 nights, James. At dawn on the 7th, your inheritance will be yours. But if you leave before then, the house will collect its debt another way. R. Lawson. My fingers trembled. Memories? Collect debt? What the hell did that mean? I flipped open the journal. The first page was blank. On the second, a sentence was scrawled in shaky handwriting. Every man builds his own prison. A drop of water fell from the ceiling onto the paper, smearing the ink. I looked up. No leak. The ceiling was dry. Then the bulb above me flickered once, twice, then went out. The chamber fell into complete darkness. My breath quickened. The flame from my lamp cast weak, trembling light, barely enough to see. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, heavy, coming from behind the wall. One step, pause, another, then closer. "Hello?" I called out. My voice cracked, swallowed by the stone. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched so long it felt alive. Then something scraped across the wall, a slow drag, like nails against rock. "Who's there?" A whisper came back, so close I could feel the air of it against my neck. "You left her." I froze, my lamp shook violently in my hand. "What?" "You left her alone." The flame dimmed, colors bending as if the air itself bent around me. For a heartbeat, the shadows in front of me twisted, and there, through the flicker, I saw her. Linda, my ex-wife. Her face pale, eyes hollow, lips trembling. She stood just beyond the light, soaked as if she'd walked through the rain. "Linda?" I whispered. She didn't answer, only stared, her mouth parting slowly as if to speak. Then the bulb above flared back to life and she was gone. My knees weakened. I stumbled back toward the passage, gasping for air, the letter still clutched in my hand. The corridor behind me was longer now, impossibly longer. The exit I'd come through was gone. "All right," I muttered, half to myself, half to the house. "You want me to stay? Fine, I'll stay." But as I said it, a new sound rose from the darkness. A heartbeat. Slow, rhythmic, coming not from me, but from the walls. Boom, boom, boom. The journal flipped open on its own, pages fluttering until they stopped on a line I hadn't seen before, ink still wet. Night 1, he has entered the heart. And below it, it remembers everything. The lamp flickered once more, then died completely. And in the suffocating dark, a voice right beside my ear whispered, "Welcome home, James." The mansion begins revealing James's past, and the line between guilt, memory, and the supernatural starts to blur. Darkness, not the kind you close your eyes to, the kind that feels alive, thick and waiting. I stayed still, holding my breath, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The whisper still rang in my ears. "Welcome home, James." The air was cold now, the kind that seeps through skin and crawls straight into bone. "Enough," I said aloud, forcing strength into my voice. "Whatever this is, you're not real." No answer, only the faint sound of something dripping, slow, rhythmic, deliberate. I fumbled with the lamp, striking the flint until a faint flame caught again. The light wavered weakly across the stone walls. The chamber was empty. The desk, the journal, the envelope, all gone. As if they'd never been there. Only one thing remained. A narrow staircase spiraling upward from the far end of the room. It hadn't been there before. I swallowed hard. "All right, Lawson," I muttered. "You wanted me to play your game. I'm playing." I started climbing. Each step moaned under my weight. The staircase twisted endlessly, walls closing tighter the higher I went. The air smelled of smoke and dust, and something else. Ash. Halfway up, I began to hear sounds again. Not whispers this time, voices. Faint, overlapping, like a dozen people speaking in another room. I recognized some of them. Linda's laugh. My daughter Emma's voice, bright and young. And underneath it all, my own. "James, stop working. It's Christmas Eve." "Just one more file, Linda. It's almost done." "Daddy, you missed the fireworks." I stopped climbing. My chest tightened. I remembered that night. I'd stayed at the office until midnight, promising I'd make it up to them. I never did. The voices faded into silence, replaced by the faint smell of burnt paper. At the top of the stairs was a wooden door. I pushed it open. Light hit me. Not warm, harsh, fluorescent. I was standing in my old office. The same cluttered desk, the same framed degrees, even the same stack of project files on the corner. It was like time had folded and brought me back. "Impossible," I whispered. Through the glass wall, I could see my younger self, sitting at the desk, sleeves rolled up, talking into a phone, impatient. And then Linda walked in, holding a small lunchbox. I watched myself wave her off without even looking up. She stood there a moment, then left quietly. The younger me never noticed. The light flickered, and suddenly the office wasn't clean anymore. Papers scattered, walls cracked, the air heavy with smoke. Fire alarms screamed in the distance. Flames licked the corners of the desk, growing fast. I stumbled back, heart racing. No, that's not real!" "That's not..." But the heat was real. I could feel it against my face, the roar of it in my ears. Then through the haze I saw her again. Linda, standing on the other side of the fire, eyes red, expression hollow. "You promised, James," she said softly. "You promised you'd come home." I tried to move toward her, but every step I took, the fire grew higher, closing her off completely. "Linda!" Her voice broke through the roar. "You left us when we needed you most. You left before the flames." Then everything went white. I woke on the floor of my guest room, drenched in sweat, chest heaving. The fireplace burned quietly. The food on the table was gone. For a second, I thought maybe it was all a dream. Then I saw it. The journal. Back on the nightstand. It was open again, a new line written in neat black ink. Night 2. The past does not forgive. My throat tightened. I looked toward the fireplace and froze. In the ashes beneath the crackling wood, something gleamed. I reached in carefully and pulled it out. A silver wedding ring. Linda's. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped it. I stared at it until my vision blurred. My mind raced. If this was Lawson's test, what did he want from me? Guilt, repentance? The fire flickered lower, the light dimming with it. Shadows moved along the walls, stretching longer, closer, and somewhere deep in the house a bell rang 3 slow chimes. Then a voice, the same calm, steady one from the first night, spoke from nowhere and everywhere at once. 6 nights remain, James. Redemption is never free. The ring slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a sound that didn't belong to metal at all. It sounded like a heartbeat. The mansion begins to turn James's guilt into living memory, each night pulling him deeper into Lawson's test and into himself. The morning after the second night felt wrong from the moment I opened my eyes. The sunlight was pale, filtered through fog that pressed itself against the windows like it wanted in. For the first time, I didn't hear birds, not even the rustle of trees. Just silence, the kind that feels like it's watching you. The ring lay on the nightstand, cleaned, polished, glinting softly. Someone had touched it during the night. I didn't sleep again. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the fog shift like breathing lungs. My reflection in the glass looked hollow, older. My eyes didn't belong to me anymore. They were someone else's, someone who'd seen too much. By noon, I decided to leave the room. The hallway was colder than yesterday. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rust and old pennies. The portraits on the walls looked newer somehow, faces sharper, eyes following me. Each one seemed to know something I didn't. At the end of the hall, A tall grandfather clock I hadn't noticed before stood against the wall. Its pendulum wasn't moving, but I could swear I still heard ticking, faint and steady, coming from inside the wood. I reached out, hand trembling, and opened the small glass door. Inside, the pendulum was still, but behind it, tucked between the gears, was a folded letter sealed with black wax. The seal bore the same crest as the one on the journal. My fingers shook as I opened it. James. The third night demands acknowledgement. The house shows the truth you've buried and the cost of what you left behind. The debt must be settled in full before dawn. H.L. Harold Lawson, the lawyer, the man who brought me here, the man who hadn't returned since that first evening. I wanted to tear the letter apart, but then I noticed something written faintly beneath the ink, as if pressed from another page. An address. Thornbrook Cemetery, Plot 42B. I didn't want to go, but the silence in the house began to change. It wasn't still anymore. It was breathing, and it wanted me gone. The fog outside was thick as milk, swallowing sound and shape. The gravel road leading to Thornbrook crunched under my boots, every step echoing like I was walking through a tunnel of ghosts. The cemetery gates loomed tall and rusted. When I pushed them open, the metal screamed like it hadn't been touched in decades. Rows of stones stretched endlessly, each one tilting slightly, worn by rain and time. I found Plot 42B near a willow tree whose branches drooped low enough to brush the ground. The headstone was simple, white marble, fresh. Linda Hartley Thompson, 1970, 2022. Forgiveness is found in truth. My breath caught in my throat. She'd been buried under the Hartley name, my uncle's family name. Why? The ground beneath the headstone looked freshly turned. I knelt, tracing the letters with trembling fingers. The soil felt warm. Then I noticed something at the base of the stone, a small wooden box, half buried, with my name burned into the lid. I dug it out slowly, afraid of what I'd find. Inside was a photo, me, Linda, and Emma standing in front of my old clinic. But someone had drawn a black circle around my face, and behind the photo was a folded sheet of legal paper. It was a will, my uncle's. I skimmed the lines, eyes widening with every word. To my nephew, James Hartley Thompson, I leave the estate known as Blackstone Manor and all assets within, provided he accepts the terms of custodianship. The heir must reside within the property for 7 consecutive nights, during which the debts of the bloodline will present themselves. Refusal or departure before completion shall forfeit both inheritance and absolution. The executor of this will, Harold Lawson, will oversee all terms. The world spun. 7 nights. Debts of the bloodline. This wasn't inheritance, it was penance. The wind picked up suddenly, scattering leaves and cold across the graves. I looked up and froze. Standing across the path, half shrouded in fog, was Emma. Her hair longer, her face older, but her eyes were the same as when she was 8. Emma? I whispered, stumbling forward. She didn't answer, didn't move. When I got closer, I saw her lips part, but her voice wasn't her own. It was calm, low, measured. Lawson's voice. You left them to burn, James. I staggered back. No, I didn't. You could have saved her. She told me to go back for Emma. And you didn't. The fog thickened, swallowing her image piece by piece until nothing remained. But the echo of her last word. Coward. The ground beneath me cracked like glass. I fell, through dirt, through darkness, landing hard on cold stone. I was back in the house. The same chamber from before. The desk was back. The journal open again. This time, written in dark red ink. Night 3, blood must remember. And beside it, a single object gleaming in the dim light. A burnt photograph of Linda holding Emma. Her hand reached toward someone outside the frame, toward me. The fire from the image seemed to flicker, alive. And from somewhere in the walls, I heard the faint sound of a heartbeat again, faster this time, louder. Boom, boom, boom. The lights flickered. The house groaned. The fog outside pressed against the windows until one of them cracked. I backed away from the desk, shaking. What do you want from me? I shouted. The answer came from the fireplace, a whisper so close it felt like it came from inside my own head. Only the living can pay the dead. Then every candle in the room went out at once. Darkness swallowed everything, and in the black I saw her, Linda, standing inches away, her eyes empty, her mouth barely moving. It's your turn, James. Linda's spirit returns, the line between life and death blurring. The house now demands payment, and James must face the truth about the fire that destroyed his family. When I opened my eyes, the world was on fire again. The flames weren't real, not this time. They were memories painted in light, crawling across the walls like shadows that refused to die. The air burned with smoke and guilt. The journal lay open beside me, the ink still wet. It read only 3 words. Final night. Choose. The house was alive now. The heartbeat pulsing through the floor was louder, faster. The walls trembled, dust raining from the ceiling. Every picture on the walls had changed. Every face was mine. I stood slowly. The silver wedding ring still lay where I dropped it days ago, glinting in the glow of the flames. I picked it up, closed my fist around it. It was warm, almost pulsing. "Linda," I whispered. "If you can hear me, if you're really here." Her voice came from the shadows behind me. Soft, sad. "You already know I am." I turned. She stood there, the same as I remembered her on our wedding day. The same gentle eyes, the same curve of her lips when she smiled. But her skin was pale as porcelain, her dress soaked in ash. "I never wanted this," I said, voice shaking. "I didn't mean for any of it, but you let it happen." Her tone wasn't angry. It was tired, the way someone sounds after years of waiting for an apology that never came. I fell to my knees. "I tried, Linda. I swear I tried." "You ran, James." The words hit harder than any fire. "You left us in the flames. You saved yourself. You told yourself it was too late, but you didn't even try." Tears burned down my face. It was smoke everywhere. I couldn't see, I couldn't. "You chose to live with guilt instead of dying with us." The walls cracked. The house groaned deeper, like a beast waking from its cage. The floorboards splintered around me. "Then why bring me here?" I yelled. "Why now? To punish me?" Her eyes flickered with something almost human. "No, James, to free you." She stepped closer. I could smell her perfume, faint beneath the scent of smoke and wood. Lawson's test wasn't punishment. It was choice. Your uncle made the same one years ago. He didn't pay, so the debt passed to you. I stared at her, breath shaking. "The debt of the living?" "Yes. Every generation hides their sins in this house, thinking time will forget. But the house remembers. It always remembers." Behind her, the journal snapped shut on its own. The room darkened, leaving only her face in the flickering light. "If you want to end it, James, you must stay. You must give the house what it wants." I stepped back. "And what does it want?" Her hand rose slowly and pointed at me. "You." The flames rose higher. The windows shattered inward. The house screamed. I felt it. The pull. A force dragging at my chest, heavy as the weight of every mistake I'd ever made. "Linda, please, there has to be another way." "There isn't. The blood must pay." I stumbled toward her, reaching through the heat. My skin blistered, but I didn't stop. If this was the end, I wasn't running again. When I touched her hand, everything went silent. No fire, no sound, no pain. Just warmth. And light. When the world came back, I was standing in a meadow. The sun was rising. Real sunlight this time. The fog was gone. The air smelled like rain and grass, not smoke. Linda stood beside me, smiling faintly. Emma was there too, her small hand tucked into her mother's. "Is this real?" I whispered. Linda shook her head. "It's peace." Emma looked up at me, her voice soft as wind. "You came back, Daddy." I smiled through tears. I never should have left. Linda reached out, touched my cheek. "Then rest now, James. The debt is paid." And just like that, they faded. The firefighters broke down the front door of Blackstone Manor after neighbors saw smoke. But there was no fire, no damage. Only one thing, a man sitting peacefully in a chair near the hearth, eyes closed, a faint smile on his face. In his lap rested a silver ring and an open journal. The last line written in his handwriting. Night 7, forgiven. Weeks later, the lawyer, Harold Lawson, arrived at the manor. He found the house strangely quiet. No heartbeat, no whispers. Just stillness. He opened the journal and read the last page. Then he smiled sadly and whispered, "You did it, James." He closed the book, slid it into his briefcase, and walked away. As he reached the front gate, the wind moved softly through the trees. Somewhere deep in the manor, the clock chimed once, low, final, like the sound of a soul being released.